Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you as always for joining me. A little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow or subscribe. I just put the videos out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Well, we've got a beautiful cricket grounds happening down there, making our way over to our wonderful signal box. And here we are working on the next key section, which is basically going to link up from the cricket loop down to where we have our coastal scene. Now, in this particular occasion, what are we going to be doing in this section? Well, as you can see from this inspirational picture here from a very popular TV show, we obviously have the section that we're going to do and create a little bit of a forest type of section. We're going to take a series of pines and build them up here, just gently coming down, and away we go. That will sort of transcend into a bit of a coastal area. And for where I live, we see a lot of that because there are a lot of pine plantations that are here along the coastline. So it's not uncommon for that sort of thing to be seen in my daily drive. So it's really more of a scenic part that we're finally starting to open up and see in this model railway, which is kind of what I want to see. A nice rake of 5 or 6 coaches that just look a little more prototypical than just going around in a basic oval. Of course, we've got our backline section, and this is certainly going to be one of those times where the backline section, as you can see, it's nice, it's simple, it's clean. Along comes the train, but we're not really going to see it back here. What I want to do is sort of have a tunnel opening here and there just before it comes around to our curved viaduct. So this is certainly a section where there's not much to go on. I'm hoping we can get it together pretty quickly. We just basically need to create a bit of a mountainside, get some trees on there, a little bit of static grass. Mostly we won't have a lot of grass because underneath trees is obviously the crushed up leaves. But it just opens up nice and simply. However, just back to that picture for a moment. How could we get such a great picture without a bicycle leaning across the bridge? So we need to have a bridge. Where did I put the damn thing? Oh. Ta-da! Now, we're not going to be custom building anything, and unfortunately in this case, once again, Made in China is going to win the day. But this is, of course, the... What did I do with that box? Ta-da! Backman. This is part of their Scene Craft series, and for a mere $130, and Lord knows what the freight was on a heavy thing, but I'm going to say I probably paid close to 200 Australian dollars for this. Let's hope we can pretty it up a little bit. Most importantly though, let's just focus on the fact that what we've got though is the perfect width here for a double entry crossing. And as you can see, when I was just slapping down a bit of the base paint here, I left some markings here because basically this is where I'm going to want to have this sitting. And if we take a coach, everything looks very smooth here. So this is going to work out quite well. And what we'll do to fill in this little section here, we'll just take a little bit of our foam, we'll cut a little wedge out, and we'll just finish it off. Now, where is it going from here? I have absolutely no idea. Is this a car? Is this a footbridge? Probably a foot one. We'll work it into a bit of a hiking trail or something. So let's just remove these for a moment and just talk about, we've got a reasonable size thing going on here. So what we're probably going to do somewhere around near where a signal box is, in either direction, but I imagine just after it, we'll probably open up a portal for it to come through. We might not, it might go further down. The logic behind that is then we don't have to worry about landscaping. I don't mind if you see a bit of the back scene. I really am the person that likes to sort of, I'm the person that's more interested in looking underneath the board at the wiring and the mechanics of it, sometimes as opposed to being lost in the scenery. But we'll figure that out in due time, and we'll probably need to do it ourselves. I do have some different types of tunnel entries and portals, but they're not really going to fit, so I think we might get a little bit original when we get to that step. But what we obviously just need is effectively just a nice sort of a mountainous area going on to put the trees. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing is, it's got to be easy. As I've talked about this modular landscaping, and as we saw with the little mountain bike trail that we did on our mountains and rock faces over there, it was a great way to go, but it is quite heavy and a small thing. So I had great success building our model golf course with our tee box, and that was just done using our extruded foam board. And obviously this seems to be what we're all using at the moment. And while it would be nice to just slap it down, we're going to have trees and we're going to add weight to it, which I guess is something we need to be aware of. I'm still undecided if we'll also put a layer of sculptor mold on. But as I said, going back to the tee box with the golf course that we've been working on, that was entirely all just done using the foam. And I now have a series of hot wire cutters so we can put it into the shape we want and carve it out. And once it was painted and then we did the landscaping, put the trees in, it was absolutely perfect. And I can slide it in and out. So I don't even think we're going to be using sculptor mold for this. Let's just see what happens. So our plan of attack though would be to probably build this in 2, possibly 3, but effectively 2 modules, one half here, one half here. And here's how I'm thinking we're going to do it the easiest way. I thought what we might do is take some of the balsa wood. We've got something a little bit thicker than we'd usually use. And I thought we might sit that at the back. We'll probably get another sheet and we'll cut it accordingly. But we'll have this sitting at the back so it gives us a reference point and somewhere to support the rest of this mountain, so to speak. And I'm not even going to cut or do anything. I buy it in this default size for those of you interested in playing at home, 915 by 75 or 7.5 centimeters and 5 mil thick. And I think if it's just sitting there, that's beautiful. And once again, if we take a piece of rolling stock and thread it onto the line, you will see that there's no problems there. I could still get a finger down in there if needed. So we haven't really lost too much there per se. We might even just cut these up into sections for supports. That's all it's there for, is just as a point. Now, let's let it sit there for a moment. The front part. 13 centimeters is the height, and we'll take the straight end of the foam board and then we just run a cut at 13 centimeters. And it's not too bad. I can see where using the blade was a bit ordinary, but that is okay. We'll just pop something across it and we'll put a little bubble on there for you. And we're in the middle. So this is basically what we're going to do. So we effectively put it together like this. We'll take another section of foam board, obviously, that's going to sit across the top, shape it up to the height we want. It probably won't go a whole lot higher. By the time we introduce some of our pine trees, it's not really going to be a whole lot higher than this, or maybe a little bit. We want to sort of keep it looking reasonably natural. I don't want it to be too steep that we're going to introduce rocky faces in that. It's got to be somewhere that come along and harvest these types of trees. So this is pretty much the thing, and I could just, so what we're going to do is once we've got the shape right and we glue these into position, you can see we can easily reference it, slot them down into place, and away we go. And I think what we're going to do is take a series of the foam, of course. We're going to build up a rough sort of a shape, carve it out, smooth it around, just nice curves. We're going to lay down the paint exactly the same way that we did do the golf tee box. I think I'm going to go back to that approach because the results were absolutely outstanding. It's lightweight, it's maneuverable, it's durable, and away we go. So I think we're going to carry on with that, do the old time-lapse speeding it up in a process here, and let's get something happening. Of course, that's why I never painted this bottom section, knowing it was going to get covered anyway. Whoa, let me just stop you here if we can. You can see how quickly we're terraforming the area, and this is a really, really good way to go. However, I need to stop and impart a little bit of wisdom, or at least we're going to do a spot of experimentation now. As you can see, we're doing pretty well here. There's not too much wastage from these panels, although let's talk about the panels just for a second. As you saw, there was one where I sort of stuffed it up a little bit, but it's okay, as I just used another sheet, and then the next one I'll just cut back and redo the layer, and it's all to do with whatever is going to happen with wherever this goes. However, first of all, I picked these sheets up for about $10, 1200 by 600 mil XPS foam board. The problem is, I've just realized we can't get them anymore here, and it's not cheap getting them, but I have managed to come across a supplier and they're going to be sent up here within the next month. But we should have enough for what we need to do to carry on. And let's just be honest here, apart from just needing a few more sheets of about this equivalent size to build up the mountain for the faulty towers end, I really don't need a whole lot more of this. Really, the rest of it is staying pretty much on the level. However, we need to do a little spot of experimentation here for the moment, because the whole idea is we're going to glue these together. I'm actually going to cut this in the middle point here. So we've got 1, 2, and there will be a third we'll work on in a bit. But obviously we want to shape them. Now I originally thought we'll glue it all together as the one piece, and then we're going to be able to take our hot foam wire cutter and we could just get a bit of an edge on it. However, the more videos I've seen is it's not the case. You really want to carve each layer one at a time. Now that's got me thinking there, is that the case? Remember, after the experimentation and fun we've had before cutting our knock retaining wall and the challenges we had with that type of foam, it might be slightly more complicated. So we'd better do a quick experiment. Again, I'm just using the Gorilla Glue here to attach it. Key tip here, you don't need much. And also, just put it in key bits you know you're not going to be cutting or shaping. Otherwise, it's a pest trying to get the wire through where the glue is. And is this stuff strong? We'll come to that in just a second. Secondly, we're going to talk about the backline bit where it's going to be joined. So regarding that backline here, we're just going to put our wood glue aside. That's not what we're doing here. But of course, we have our other Gorilla Glue here. Now, this is the one that tends to foam up and expand. But let's just quickly point this out. I'm probably going to use it across the back here just to create, when we come up with the layer to create this tunneled section, just this way as it expands, it's really going to bleed in and grab onto everything. But let me just quickly point out, as you saw in the time lapse, for our demonstration, to find out if we can cut 3 panels at once using the hot foam wire cutter, I just had a couple of offcuts and I put a little bit of just the standard clear, non-foaming Gorilla Glue, a little bit in the middle here, a little bit in the middle here, put it together, and I left the drill on it overnight. And that is absolutely rock solid. And that's kind of my point. So when you see them lathering up all the glues and things like that, you really don't need it in this application. On this particular situation here, just remembering that we're going to cut this module in half. So we'll just use this blue ruler as a bit of a thing. If we were to be gluing down all 4 of these, I'd literally be putting a dab of glue here and here. And I literally mean a dab, next layer, a dab. That way I'm keeping it well away from where we're going to be shaping it and doing any work, and away we go. A little really does go a long way with this stuff. Okay. So we've put it together. So let's see if we can carve it doing all 3 at once, because obviously if we can do big sections at once, we're going to get a much better finish. Regarding that video on our knock retaining wall that we modified, you'll recall I did buy another hot wire cutter, and that was the model that obviously has its, like a table saw, has a flat bed, and we can set it into a specific angle and pass it through. And that wire does get a lot hotter than this cheapy little one that we've picked up here. However, this can be absolutely invaluable now that I've had more of a play and understanding how and what to do with it. So what we'll do, let's turn it on and see if we can cut all 3 at once. Just remember, we'll just use 1 at the moment. You can see how smoothly 1 layer does cut like that. So it's tremendous. We're going to go for something a little more ambitious here, and we'll take our time. We'll put a bit of an angle on it here. I think that'll look good. Let's try that. Really going to come in now. Give it the real business here. Okay, let's see what we've got. I don't really have any problems with that at all. And again, the great thing, you can come back, go over, and there we've got. So we're literally, and this is only because of the width of my wire, of course. So that is 3 layers. Now we're going to be talking about 4, and we might just do it in 2 pieces, which is fair enough. But I think that's quite good. So the point is, yes, you can build up. I think we'll probably do 2 at a time and work on that. It's just mostly because I don't have a big enough head. I don't really want to use the other foam cutter at the moment, although we probably will get a much, much smoother result from it, more consistent. Of course, the countryside isn't perfectly flat and smooth all the time, so we'll see what we can do. The important thing is this is going to work, so it doesn't hurt now to start gluing together to get the modules shaped up. Let me just get you in nice and close for a minute. You probably noticed in that time lapse, I've knocked up this little template at the moment. It's just temporarily screwed in at the moment. All it is it's just giving me the perfect 90-degree section that I can mount everything to, and I've constantly got everything aligned. As I set the measurements up where to go, I always had a perfect right angle to work on. Of course, what's going to happen is we take the screw out, we're going to take that guide out. I'm very sure we're going to be using that again. It's very, very useful, and carry on. But it really does, with this stuff, give us that beautiful reference point of where we need to be. What's going to happen over here? Well, we're probably going to end up building its own little scene that will tuck in here, because I'm going to do something with a retaining wall back here. So we'll come back to that in due course.
Would not be released, could not be denied. I tried to say the words, got tripped up inside.
So let us just remember that this particular terrain was all done using just foam board, and that's got some tremendous shape and character to it. Again, I wasn't even using a hot wire foam cutter, I don't believe, on this. But I think and all we did was just, as you can see, lick of paint, and then just started applying our static grass accordingly. So, and the great thing about it being lightweight, we could flip it over and it's much easier to make the module. So I think we're going to stick with this, because this has now been sitting here for some time. Nothing's broken down or gone bad, and look at that, it's reasonably seamless join down to the board. Of course, because I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of this just yet, we are actually going to finish up this accordingly. But at the moment, looks good. So we've just flipped the modules upside down at the moment, just to put a little bit more glue and beat it along the side here of the timber. And as you can see, that's ridiculously solid. I'm truthfully not going to go anywhere with this whatsoever. So that's absolutely fantastic. We are still going to need to maintain this back line at the moment. So it's important we're going to create a way we can lift out, clean the tracks, and do whatever. Now, we could just all assemble this in one piece. However, I think it's going to get a bit too much once we've put the landscape on. So first of all, let us just put our module back on. Looks quite good. Give it a quick test. Looks good to me. Okay, and this will be our other little end bit as well. So, here's what we've got. I think what we're going to do is focus on having this section be the one that's going to come out at the moment, which means we may just set the mountain section up. We probably may still just leave it set up so it can move as one. Let's see what we come up with.
Tried to say the words, got tripped up inside. You can murder them with guns, poison them with a lie. You take a person's life, but you can't squelch his pride. not my own. This world is not my home. I carry it on my back as far as my feet will roam. I opened up my eyes, offered up my coat.
Whoa! I'm just going to stop you here for a moment because I wanted to explain something that you're probably not seeing or understanding what I'm doing in the time lapse. Now, I've got this sort of transparency type of paper that they used to use on overhead projectors. And what I'm actually doing, mostly I'm just focusing on attaching it to one side, which is why you would have seen in the picture it was glued together and weighted down. The whole idea is when it's time to manipulate, we're not really going to move this. It won't be fixed down. It's going to stay the way it is. It has been glued as one piece, so it can shuffle in or out because we're going to have the bridge. So, you know, there's movement if needed. But the whole idea is when it's time to slide this one out or remove it and lift it to maintain the tracks, it should slide in and out reasonably effortlessly, as opposed to two pieces of foam rubbing together. There's quite good adhesion on it. So we're just trying to minimize it. And the whole idea was, at least by having this glued to one side, is once we've put our thing on, it should just slide off nice and easy. That's the plan of attack. Is it going to work? Who knows?
I opened up my eyes, offered up my coat, opened up my mouth, knife tied in my throat. Yeah, will I be denied? Will I be denied? If not for innocence, my guilt would stop right here. We're living all my life in the span of just 1 year. My mouth's a hurricane and something inside just died. I'd always just assume my evil would subside. Could I have been misled? Could you have misread? Please don't punish me for things I have not said. Life's a lonely mile, memory for a while. You never speak to me unless it's to revile. But will not be denied. Will not be denied. Will not be denied. Will not be
Just a couple of quick things here to point out. You can see where I had carved out what was basically the side of where the track was and turned it into a little bit of a creek thing. I don't think that was a bad thing. Also, I couldn't help but notice this little green tree. Every trail you go on, somewhere where there's a single track and a fire track meeting up, there's somehow a new little green tree that's forging its way ahead in the most strangest place. And sure enough, that's pretty much how I took the inspiration. Here in South Australia, there's a little fire trail running down the back end of Seaview Downs, and you can see a single trail for the mountain bike riders passes a little green tree. So much so that I thought it would only be fitting that on the particular section where the trail rides off and the road goes, I thought we should have our little green pine tree there. So that's the story with that one. Citadel Technical paint, Agrellan earth, is what was used to create those cracks at the side of the road there from the dried up puddles, which I did speak earlier in the Express series of videos about. Ta-da! One completed part one forest section, and I'm quite happy with how this turned up. I will point out that we are going to break the video up into part one because, as you can see, there's still landscaping we need to do here. I need to do the bridge section here, and that's because I'm noodling over. I might try building my own roadbed, something a little bit different than what I was planning. I think we're going to try and up for a little more detail. I do have the schoolboy on the bridge looking over as referenced in our particular picture, and also the bicycle as well. So we're going to work on that a bit later. It's going to need time, and I've just temporarily put the tree here just to give you a bit of an idea, but still plenty of work that we'll come back to at the moment. We'll keep sort of progressing around and clean these things up as we come along. I really do like green, as you can tell by my color. So I always wanted to have a bit of a feature here that was a bit mountainous than this. I wasn't originally planning a tunnel, but we've got one anyway. Now this modular type of construction, I really think works out quite well. In my situation, the bridge will twist off. I can pull back here and quite easily lift off the back seam. And the rest as well isn't in any fixed place. They all move quite easily, which is going to bring us to the next video coming up soon. It may not be the exact next one, where we're going to be tinkering around with our portal openings for that tunnel section, which was an unexpected challenge. Going the little extra distance and just carving out a little bit of a creekway, if you like, just for the water that would be running off a mountain to go along and just gather along. It's just extra detail I really think looks good when you bring your eye down and you're bringing a locomotive across, any more than adding the figures onto the scene. And I've kept it pretty basic. This is something we'll probably come back to a little bit later in time. If we just come into some quick close-ups just here for a minute, where I have the sweeping bend where our dirt bikes would be coming in, I did take a little bit of the Pico brake dust and I just dusted it over some of the lower limbs of the tree, just in the situation if it's a bit of a dusty day and they swing around, that dust and dirt is going to be deposited across the lower ends of the tree. And I think this little feature here with the dirt bike rider taking an alternative trail and then making the jump going down just gives a little bit of interest there. there's a lot more detail I want to bring into the scene as we go on and probably just enhance the scenery further. But for the moment, this could just go on forever. That's the thrill of the hobby we're involved in. So we're just going to stop here. Again, temporary, just using that blue card again to have sorted a backdrop out. Works quite well in this situation. And the density, I'd love to have gone denser. I certainly have the trees to do so, but I wanted to keep it just opened up so that you're sort of coming in and looking at the road that's heading up and losing itself into the top of the mountain there. It just gives a little bit of detail. There's somewhere for the eyes to consistently be looking, particularly here where we've made that separate single trail track for our hikers, dirt bike riders or mountain bike riders to make their way through, including another little swifty little shortcut that comes down here. I spoke to you in an earlier video about using the Citadel Technical paint to get those cracks happening in the dried up puddles at the side of the road. And I think the little things like that are really what's going to suck the viewer in onto the particular scene. Of course, I haven't quite finished. As mentioned, we'll come back into a part 2 and 3 in the future, I'm sure. But where it just looks like we've had a few trees that have just not quite made it, and obviously they've just left the stumps there and what have you. Of course, just twigs and sticks from the garden, of course, we've just put across. So all in all, I think it's caused a little bit of interest onto the area now. Remember, this section is going to remain pretty simple. There will be a signal gantry appearing in it, but for the most part, this line side carrying on the lower level, nothing else really of any interest. It's just going to be a nice scenic section for the train to run, and that's obviously always going to be a key thing. The feature really is to see a marvelous mountain, but also we want to see our trains, and in a scene where they're not going to be lost in the scenery or in the buildings. Really, they just have a beautiful background to get lost against there. So of course, as our magnificent trains and rolling stock come by, they have this equally magnificent backdrop that will frame up any good view. And this is kind of a semi-key feature any more than the cricket club. Remember, the door is on the opposite side. So as soon as the door is open and someone comes in, bang, here we are. So look, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's all going to be a great big feature. But I think this is probably one of the most impressive terrain sections we're going to see, certainly the most built up of any of them. The rest remains quite flat, and also we keep the engineering practicality that the trains themselves are not having to do anything complicated. These are 2 flat sections here, so the trains smoothly just carry on. Getting access to trees at the best of times can be tricky when you don't have a store to walk into and compare different ones. I always wanted to have your typical type of pine trees, but some of the other unique ones I've picked up, particularly this one, I don't think could be in a better place. I can think of 3 scenes in real life that I've passed with this exact tree on a road like this where we used to go blackberry picking and things like this, of which is going to feature in a later scene, and just trying to add a bit of variety. I mean, it was mostly with these particular ones just to give us a little bit of color and interest. So it doesn't have to be 100% correct, but I think it just really breaks up the scene nicely. Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, that will now do us once again for another video. I'd like to thank you so much for joining me, and I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Stay safe. Toodles.